Many people go on about the fact that Israel has this blockade with Gaza and has a very tight and strict border, as it rightly should when you're dealing with a population and a leadership that want you dead. Many people don't seem to be aware that Egypt too has an extremely tight border with Gaza. And they don't let Gazans in. And much as they say, we have solidarity with people of Gaza, and they may say what Israel's doing is unacceptable, why don't you let all these refugees in? They don't want to do that. Why? Here, Dennis Prager addresses this fundamental question in a very short and concise, but brilliant explanation. And by the way, just want you to know that Dennis Prager is currently very unwell. He's looks like paralyzed basically from neck down. So please do keep him in your prayers. His Hebrew name is Shmuel Nehemiah Ben Hinder. That's Shmuel Nehemiah Ben Hinder. Please do keep him in your prayers for a full recovery. But have a watch of this brilliant clip, and then I'll give you my thoughts on the other side.
I was wondering if you could please comment on your thoughts about why Egypt won't allow refugees from Gaza, as well as all the Muslim nations which surround Israel. What is the reasoning preventing refuge to the Palestinians? Thank you. Oh, I'll tell you the reason. They can't stand the Palestinians. And the reason they can't stand the Palestinians is because wherever the Palestinians have gone to in the Arab world, there has been massive bloodshed as a result. They were the primary instigators of the civil war in Lebanon. They were so disruptive in Jordan that the king of Jordan, Hussein, killed tens of thousands of them. That's what's called Black September, when so many Palestinians were killed by Jordan. Of course, nobody talks about this because it wasn't Israel who killed them. It was another Arab state. Egypt doesn't want this group in their midst either. I know this is really, what is the word? Politically incorrect. But the Palestinians are not an impressive people. If morality it renders you impressive or not impressive. Okay? The legacy of terror committed by Palestinians is probably the greatest of any one single group on earth today. They're the people who slaughtered the entire Israeli Olympic team in the 1972 Olympics. They're the people who blew up school buses filled with school children in Israel. And here's the thing, they are heroes among fellow Palestinians. Here's another thing that you might find of interest with regard to the Palestinians. I realize this in speaking about the difference between the Nazis and Hamas, because there's only one difference. They both want to exterminate the Jewish people. But there is one difference. Hamas bragged about what they did to their fellow Palestinians, and the Nazis hid what they did to the Jews from their fellow Germans. In other words, there were more Germans who would have been upset about what Hitler was doing to Jews than there are Palestinians upset about Iran or Hamas would do to Jews. Yeah, I'm sorry, I hate to say this. I wish it weren't true. It's an unimpressive group. Are there impressive individual Palestinians? Of course there are. Of course. There's no group that's all good or all bad. But ask Jordan, ask Lebanon, and ask Egypt what they think about the Palestinians. Don't ask the Israelis. In fact, the Israelis were much kinder to Palestinians. In fact, ironically, there are one fifth of all of Israel are Palestinians, ironically, Palestinian Arabs. But they have become used to Western civilization and to tolerance and to openness. And notice that they have not sided with Hamas. But the Palestinians outside of Israel have. That's, in fact, every poll done by Arab polling has shown that Israeli Arabs are more pro-Israel now than at any time since Israel was established. None of this would, however, be known to most people because they don't report this. And of course, you know, there's such a desire to say, oh, you know, there are beautiful Israelis and beautiful Palestinians and ugly Israelis and ugly Palestinians. Of course, that's true. But as in the sum total, you know, a lot of Palestinians were driven to Israeli hospitals if their kid had cancer. Yeah, Israelis, Jewish Israelis would be driving them. One of the reasons that the Israelis were so hurt by what happened October 7th, aside from the evil that took place, was the disappointment because so many from Gaza had been working in the homes. They would cross the border and be treated beautifully by Israelis over the course of years. But they were taking notes about where the shelters were, where an Israeli could hide in terms of attack. And that is one of the ways in which the butchers of October 7th found Israelis. So that's why Egypt doesn't want Palestinians inside of Egypt.
So very true words from Dennis, and quite comprehensive. There's one other element that I think is worth emphasizing, and I wonder what you, dear viewer, think about this point that I raise here, which is that isn't there also another great benefit to keeping the Palestinians inside of Gaza and not saying, all right, our Arabs, brothers and sisters in Judea and Samaria or Gaza, they can move to parts of the Arab world to which they are indigenous to, which is 100 times the landmass size of Israel. Well, there's another benefit, which is that if you keep them there and they continue their cynical narrative that they have the rights to all the land and that they are the ones that are the indigenous people, which of course is ridiculous, and that the land has been stolen from them, which of course is a lie, then you can actually, number one, distract from the problems internally in your own countries and say, hey, look at this problem here, my fellow Arab citizens, right? So you can distract from your own issues and get people riled up about what Israel's doing. Number two, you can perpetuate the conflict. In fact, the biggest driver of Israel's global isolation is that people have bought into the lie about the Palestinians, that they represent genuine desire for self-determination and a unique national identity that just wants to have its own state. If you can keep them in there, then you can perpetuate that pressure. The second that they leave and move to other parts of the Arab world, that all melts away. And you have to face your own problems. You can no longer point to the Jews as easily, right? Don't you think that's another big part of this? That they want to perpetuate this conflict? I don't know. I think that seems to me a pretty obvious case of what's going on. It's not just that they don't want to bring in Arabs, into Palestinians into their territories. I think it's the same reason they create this refugee phenomena where the refugee status can be passed on to your children and grandchildren, but you don't apply to other refugees. This is why, in order to be able to state this clearly, in order to be able to refute the lies and see the Palestinian cause for what it is, you need to know the history. So, if you haven't already, it's time to get clued up. If you want to get clued up, you can click on the link below and watch our documentary on JTV Plus, which, by the way, we also have loads of other really cool documentaries and exclusive interview content, and we have private live streams that I do with viewers. But you can watch the documentary we created recently about the invention of the Palestinians, how a nation was invented solely to destroy another. Have a watch. The Palestinians. We have been told they are an ancient people fighting for their homeland which has been stolen from them. This narrative has fueled decades of conflict, painting Israel as an occupier of stolen land. But what if this identity is not of an ancient nation, but a modern, cynical invention? A political construct designed not to build a state, but to dismantle the Jewish one. In this JTV Plus documentary, we're going to uncover the truth behind the creation of the Palestinian identity, how it was forged in the fires of pan-Arabism, absent in historical records until strategically rebranded in the 1960s by leaders like Egyptian-born Yasser Arafat to rally global opposition against Israel. We'll trace its roots from the Ottoman era, where Palestine was a region without a distinct people, through the pre-1948 years of Arab rejectionism, before focusing on the pivotal shift of the 1960s, when Arafat declared we should now be known as Palestinians, inventing symbols like the flag to mask genocidal aims. This wasn't about self-determination, it was about exploiting refugees, suppressing true aspirations under Arab rule, and perpetuating a war to destroy Israel. Join us as we debunk the myths of an ancient Palestinian nation, expose the strategic manipulation, and reveal how this construct has hindered peace while fueling hate. Fair but firm, this is the story of an identity weaponized, not for building a future, but for erasing one. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.